Vanguard rides again. Welcome back to the channel, and today's video is all about, wrong way, Alphacore. Now, out of the Ripperverse trilogy, I'd probably say Alphacore was the best, and this isn't to say ISOM 1 and 2 weren't good, because when I got my unboxing, which you can see on the channel, I'll leave that in the description, I got ISOM 1, I got ISOM 2, I got Alphacore and a shirt and a poster. And, before I read Alphacore, I reread everything. I didn't get that shit, so I don't know how to speak English all of a sudden. I must have had like a freaking brain tumor. Anyways, I reread ISOM 1, and, I enjoyed it I enjoyed it even more, actually, than I did the first time. There were, like, little things about the story that makes me think. Like, I picked up on more things this time. And then ISOM 2 was really enjoyable. I liked it a lot. I think the pacing of ISOM 2 is a little better than ISOM 1, where it's like things feel like they're happening, and they're happening a lot. They're happening like there's a word in the self-improvement space, a phrase that they're always using. It's like urgent patience, where the story is trudging along patiently, but there's like an urgency to it in terms of the action. Like, the action is masterfully done in ISOM 2. It's like action-packed. ISOM 1 had action here and there, but I feel like ISOM 2, he really outdid himself with how he structured the action in the story. And Gooding was a very cool character. I really enjoyed him. I'm hoping to see more of him in the future. But that being said, you can tell that Alphacore was written by an industry veteran, and good job on Eric July for getting Chuck Dixon to do this, because Chuck did a great job. And I remember, sorry for coughing in your guys' ears like that, but I remember they were talking about, let me just take a drink of water so I don't do that again. I remember they were saying that, well, Chuck Dixon was saying that they were approaching it as a procedural, but with superheroes. Or superpowers, anyway. And I will say it was done really well. Like, as you're reading it, it really does feel like a procedural, but it just has these, like, powered characters in it. Like, it's like you're watching an episode of The Wire, but in comic book form and with superheroes. And, of course, an idea like that isn't entirely original. You have Top 10 and Powers. And even when Powers came out, Alan Moore was accusing them of ripping off his idea. But that idea in itself, one, there's nothing new under the sun. Okay? It's just, however you're able to take an idea that's probably been done to death 1,000 times, because what are there, like 10 story types in all of existence? And every story can probably fit into the 10 story types if you just, think about the basics of the story. So, like, specifically with the super procedural thing, it's like, come on. It's like, what if the heroes in our daily life, I mean, if you're like a boomer, this is probably what you think of cops. The heroes in our daily life were like the superheroes from comic books. It's a very basic thought. It depends on the execution. Personally, I thought Alan Moore's execution was better than the Powers execution, but those are two completely different books in terms of their tone. And I would say Alphacore is completely different from those books in terms of its tone. Yeah. And I mean, even when I was a kid, you had Rescue Heroes, which was pretty much emergency workers, but also their G.I. Joe. Like, you got like Billy Blazes and shit. Anyways, back to the main point. I do that a lot. I go off on tangents. I can't help it. I'm sorry. Now, but, out of the book, of course, this was to be expected. My favorite character was Brian Solari, because with him, I felt like they were doing something. I don't know if this was deliberate. I think it was. I feel like Solari is Rippaverse, because, every single superhero universe, every single one, you can show me any superhero universe and I can probably find it, has to have a Superman pastiche or homage, right? Marvel has like freaking 32 of them, just flying around, right? Marvel has a whole bunch. And it's because, Superman's a great character. He's the original archetype, right? So every single universe introduces some kind of, even if the parody is there for like 10 seconds. He's always there. So, of course, Ripperverse has their own take on the Superman homage. But I feel like what their take was, it's like, we're going to bring back what made Superman cool. That grit, that can-do attitude, that sort of masculinity that they felt is missing in the current take on Superman. And I guess they gave him a little bit more of like a military aesthetic and approach. But like he really comes off as like Superman. Like you're like, this guy, this is Superman, but done right. Like I like this take on Superman. Like he's a little more aggressive, but it works. It works for the character. It works for the theme. Now we can get to the main crux of this, or the thing that inspired me to really like dig deep into the Ripperverse, or recently anyway, because I've always been a fan of Eric July and his channel, Young Ripper. So, as I was looking up things about Alphacore to begin my unboxing and my review, I found something on this like Reddit post with this guy comparing sales trends, right? And you have, I saw one, 3 million out the gate, really good, right? It was like 3.6 or some shit. Lots of money. Then ISOM 2 comes out, and this is what the guy pointed out, and made 2 million. And then Alphacore is like settling around 1, maybe it might reach 2, I'm not sure. Now, the way he was presenting this was he was being all doom and gloom and talking about how, the Ripperverse is destined to fail because it's like fishing in a small pond and that pond is drying up. The idea being that Eric July's built-in audience isn't strong enough to fuel his comic success, which, sure, whatever, if you want to say that. And naturally, in the comments, there are people calling the guy an idiot. They're like, it's like you went through all these sales and statistics to make a point that didn't even make sense or wasn't true. And, when I looked at this, I thought to myself, because one of the things he said was like, oh, you can't. He's not marketing the comic well enough because the whole go woke, go broke thing isn't gonna last forever. Which, Eric July hasn't marketed the comic in that way at all. He talks about that kind of stuff on his main channel, and that's part of his appeal. It's part of why people watch him. But personally, he has not marketed any of his comics as like anti-woke. He actually went to great lengths to talk about how they weren't anti-woke. But what I will say is I do believe that there probably is going to be a need for a marketing push, which definitely is coming. Because the thing is, I know Eric July is not an idiot. I know he's a smart guy when it comes to marketing. When you look at the way he rolled out the Ripperverse, intelligent stuff. So I know that that's coming up eventually. There's going to be like a different approach to their marketing. They're probably going to do a massive expansion campaign. That's what every business does, and that is the main point that I want to make here. In that the guy, you could tell this guy had no understanding of business. And I mean, most people don't, I mean, you look at something like that where the numbers are steadily, like, not steadily, but they're like lower with each like unveiling. And you're probably thinking in your head, oh my God, this means that it's losing money. It's gonna fail. But that's not how it works. If you have any understanding of marketing trends, you see that they bounce up and down all the time. That's just, business is a very tumultuous reign. But at the same time, especially in terms with something like the Ripperverse, one, every launch is usually very explosive and, usually do really well the first time as opposed to other times. Like even, I remember my friend, me and him would talk a lot about this kind of stuff because he used to do like event planning and marketing and stuff. And like when he did it for this like college, they would have an event, and let's say the event was like their yearly anime themed. The first time they did it, big explosive thing because, they pushed it, they got everybody to come. Subsequent times, it wouldn't be as high as that first time, but it's usually what people call a fluke. This happens with movies as well. So the first time the Ripperverse comes out, Eric July, he has a big marketing push, he announces it, so of course it brings a lot of eyes in, right? But then things start to simmer when we get to ISOM 2, the market starts to readjust and starts to get back to baseline. So that's all that's happening. And of course, as Ripper and his I don't know why I can't talk all of a sudden, but as Eric and his partners look at the trends, which I'm sure they see, I'm sure they understand, they will adjust and they will figure out how to get sales to a certain, like a good baseline in which they can make money and also spend money. Because that's the other thing. One thing that Eric does, which shows that he has a great understanding of business, is that he will talk about how much money they made, but he always talks in terms of how much units they sold, which is smart, because that is what you really want to focus on. You can make all the money in the world, right? But the units is what matters, because if you sold like 10 units and then you have to break down your marketing, like let's say I was like, I made $1 million and you sold like I don't know, like 32 units, right? Now you have to break down the marketing, right? And you have to think in your head, okay, for each unit I sold, basically on average I had to spend this much to market that unit. Like, it's usually how you have to think of these things. And if you have to spend too much per unit to market in terms of marketing, in terms of like getting eyes on it, in order to get that purchase, if they're not even, they can't even be even. Like the amount you make per unit has to be way more than the amount you sold. The amount you made per unit upon the sell has to be way more than how much you spent trying to market that unit. So yeah, I don't believe there's any doom and gloom for the Ripperverse. I think the Ripperverse will, settle to a baseline. I think in time, after once Yaira comes out, she's their most popular character, I see her making probably more than the ISOM books ever made. Not ever made, but I think she's probably going to reach at least 2 to 3 million. Who knows? She might even make more because she's their most popular. Right now, I think she's the most popular character in the Ripperverse, Yaira. So, the Yaira book, I think, is going to be what brings things back to a baseline. And then as Eric starts trying to figure out how to market or how to do a big expansion thing, which is what every company does. Every company does an expansion eventually. They settle in on their niche. I mean, really explosive companies usually don't even settle on a niche. They try to go for as much. But basically, even beyond Ripperverse, what a company usually does is they go for a wide niche, then they narrow it down, and then they do another kind of push. They kind of widen it a little bit. This is what they do. This is how business works. So what's going to happen is Eric is hyper focused on a certain stretch of the internet for now, right? And these are the people who are disgruntled comic veterans. They hate the current state of comic books, or the absolute state of comic books, and they want something new. But they want something not even new. They want something that brings us back to the legends of yore. And that's what Eric is trying. He said this 1,000 times. That's the avenue that he's trying to fill. Now, as he fills that avenue, and he's making millions of dollars, so he's doing pretty well in that avenue. He's gonna, make a little bit of an expansion. He's gonna widen the net a little bit. He's gonna get more people in. And the way he's probably gonna do this is he's gonna use animation. I'm thinking animation is probably his best bet to pull in as many people as he can. So that's probably what's gonna happen next, and that's gonna be what settles. I think he's gonna typically make millions in terms of his books. One thing that the Reddit poster said was he will never compete with Marvel or DC. And I know Eric said that, and I personally probably agree that he's not going to reach that point unless those companies keel over and die. And I say that only because this is not a slight against Rippa or anything, or against indie industries. It's just you have to remember, these companies, they're pretty much government entities. Everything that they do is their success is fueled. These companies will never die. They will stay alive because they have so many built-in metrics and fail-safes to keep them. They have plants in the media industry who just review whatever they do and whatever they say. And I remember when the Disney movies were coming out, it was back in their big heyday. It was very clear that they would just hire people to pump out memes. This is why I conspiracy theory time, but this is why I thought Marvel was so genius. I was like, yeah, they obviously hire people to pump out memes about their movies like all the time, and I think that's a part of why they caught on so well. So I don't think, unless those companies literally die, I don't think Eric July is going to be able to compete with them on a level that is like an actual contender. I think what he'll have to do is he'll have to stay within his niche and expand and get bigger and bigger. But I think maybe probably like Dark Horse or something, or like Image. I can definitely see him beating out like those companies. Because Image sucks, like IDW and shit. I see him like swallowing up those, but I don't see him like squaring up, so to say, with DC and Marvel, especially not fucking Marvel or Disney, the house of ideas, right? But anyways, that's all I have to say on the matter. Gotta do a little dance. Vanguard out.